how about $300? And I said, yeah, that'll work. So a few months ago, I told everyone about finding one of my unicorn cars, and it was a 1985 Audi 4000S Quattro sedan, Brock Yates Cannonball One Lap of America edition. It was a very rare car that Brumos Audi built with dealer installed options and the help of Brock Yates. In fact, he also hand signed the trunk lids of all 12 cars. And they weren't cars that were going to be ultra desirable between then and now, so most of them inevitably have been crushed or destroyed in some other way. But I knew two still existed. There was a guy who had gone to Georgia Tech almost 25 years before I did, and he had one that he'd bought new in Jacksonville and was still daily driving in Seattle, over 250,000 miles on the car. And he knew of one other that I had seen him talking about on Audi World, and that's the car that I'd been able to buy. So you can look at the other story to hear the story about how I came to find the car. But a few months ago, it sort of was here in my warehouse, not running. It hadn't run in about 17 years, and I had honestly no idea how to make it run. Kind of bringing a car like that back to life was well beyond any mechanical acumen or experience I had, and I knew that I was going to need some help. So I was looking at shops and looking at people, and actually I was wandering around our local Cars and Coffee meet, Caffeine and Octane, and I happened upon this guy that had a very similar aged Audi. And I walk up to him and I'm like, hey, will you tell me about this car? And he was thrilled to. He said, I've got 5 of these cars. I end up just buying another one every time I need another car because it's cheaper and I know everything about them, and I've got endless stores of used parts and things like that. Yeah, I rebuilt this, replaced this, rebuilt this. I like to do this differently than the factory says because it works just so much better. This. I'm like, this is terrific. I said, how would you feel about doing another one? He said, well, it's kind of what I do all the time. I'll be more than happy to look at it. I said, well, how about you come over to our warehouse, take a look at the car, and just tell me what you think. So a few days later, we coordinate, and he comes by the VINwiki warehouse where the car's stored, and he says, I don't see any glaring reason. Nothing's missing that, it seems like it's going to keep it from running. Obviously, we're going to have to go through sort of everything, but, I think that's something I could undertake. He said, now, are you looking for somebody to tell you how to do this, or do you want someone to do it for you? And I said, that. I'm going to need somebody to do it for me. I didn't have the time and certainly not the understanding of what I would need to be doing in order to get this done myself. And so he was rather happy to do so. He said, well, how much did you kind of have budgeted to spend on this? And I said, well, my goal with the car is to use it for the next 2904 race, which is a sort of a budget cheap car across the country race that we did back in 2015 with the salvage title 12 owner 2-accident S55 AMG. So this is more in the spirit of that, and it does limit my budget, but I'm not too terribly concerned about that right now. I want the car to run. And so I said, but I'm probably just going to need you to give me a number. He said, well, how about to service the car and kind of get it running, just, how about $300? And I said, yeah, that'll work. I was expecting it to have another 0 after it. And so I said, you know what? Why don't I just go ahead and give it to you in cash, and I'll have my roadside assistance people tow it to your driveway in a couple days, and we'll be good to go. And he said, well, just make sure that the tow truck doesn't pull in the driveway across from my house, because I really can't put into words how much he hates all the cars that I work on, but I live in a neighborhood with no HOA regulations for a good reason. So he thought it would take him about 2 weeks to do this. It ended up taking probably a little over 2 months, but we started early enough that it wasn't necessarily crunch time yet. And so he went through and replaced the intake manifold and rebuilt the CIS, the injection system unit, put a new battery, new brakes, we got new tires, ended up redoing the exhaust because it was all rusted out. We did new AC compressor, repaired the cruise control of all things, went through, cleaned the injectors, and he just laundry list everything. He'd just send me parts, I'd order them, have them shipped to his house, and they'd go on. And so about 3 or 4 weeks ago, he got the car to start. And it was running around on its own power, but not necessarily running well. In fact, I picked it up from his house to drive it a bit with still a few things left to do. And as I pulled into the VINwiki parking lot, it died. And it was strange because it behaved almost as though it needed more electricity, but if you tried to put a charger on it or jump it, everything was fine. It had plenty of voltage. So it was something beyond that, probably something fuel related. So I went back out a few minutes later and the car started right up. I'm like, that's strange. So I took it to go pick up something else and it died on my way there in the exact same way. The car just shut off. And so I pushed it off to the side of the road and just sat there. And about 10 minutes later, I tried to start it and it fired right up. So, well, that's strange. And I came to learn that it will die about half the time where you want it to idle. But if you let it sit for about 6 minutes, actually at least 6 minutes, it'll start right up. Strange issue, still no idea exactly why that would happen. I came to learn that you could sort of left foot brake and keep the throttle up and not very gracefully, but generally make it somewhere that you had to be. The other option is that if you just put it into neutral as you're still going 20 or 30 miles per hour, it will die before you stop. And if you jam it into second gear and drop the clutch, it'll start right back up. So I learned a lot about how the car works, and none of it was encouraging in terms of its ability to make it from New York to San Francisco, the route for the upcoming 2904. So we continued along and I get it back to him, and through further diagnosis, it definitely appears to be something with the injection system. The fuel pressure regulator, which is electronic and is really the only thing in the injection system that's run by the ECU, works if you turn it off and if you unplug it. So that shouldn't work that way, and it's sort of evidence that somebody's been in there messing with things more. So we were experimenting with that today, but we are getting a little bit down to the wire. So it'll be a few more weeks till I know exactly what else the car is going to need and what else we're going to have to do. But the goal is still to take it to New York, drive it to California, and maybe even drive it home. So we'll have to see how that works. But that's the current status report of the 1985 Audi 4000S Quattro Cannonball Edition car.
If you like that story, it's time to make one of your own. Extreme Experience puts you in the driver's seat of some of the world's best supercars at over 20 racetracks from coast to coast, with no speed limits, no shifting restrictions, and no governors. Head to the link to choose your supercar, find a racetrack near you, and start making a story of your own. Extreme Experience. It's your turn.